the paranormal,
ghosts,
spirits,
demons,
reincarnation,
past lives,
the afterlife,
divination,
exorcisms,
witchcraft.
the unseen.
He's psychic medium Chris George.
And he's Victor the Voice Furman.
We are Second Sight Radio.
Welcome back. This is Second Sight Radio, hour number 2. You're listening to psychic medium Chris George and Victor the Voice Furman. The first hour we were talking with author Simone Wright, the evolutionary mind coach for elite performers and visionary leaders. And a book is First Intelligence. And I got to tell you, the first hour was fantastic. You're listening to UPRN 107.7 out of New Orleans. And I got to tell you, Vic, I'm really enjoying this show. Anyway, why don't we get on to our Church of Second Sight? I know you had something you wanted to talk about, though. It's all yours, kid.
You know, Chris, had a very interesting experience this past weekend, and I think more than the experience, what I'm about to share for people, especially people who have parents who are getting on in years, there's a valuable lesson here. My mother is 83. She's had a difficult life, and it's taken its toll on her physically. She and I used to have conversations about things, and she always sort of put off anything I would say to her about the spirituality or psychic phenomena or any of the topics that we discuss on this show. It was never part of her, at least consciously, she would discuss with me as part of her purview and her view of life. In any event, I was visiting her. She had to go into rehab this last couple of weeks because she had another episode with her lungs. And the rehab is more of exercise and building up her lung strength. And one of the things that manifested for her about 3 years ago was out of the blue, she came down with Parkinson's disease. And when I was sitting with her on Sunday, and we were chatting, she said, "Where did I get Parkinson's disease from?" She said, "No one in our family history ever had Parkinson's disease." And I said, "You know, Mom," I said, "not only that, but my brother, my sister, and I all have autoimmune conditions. They're not life-threatening, but they're challenges. And there's no history, and they're 3 different autoimmune conditions, and there's no history in our family on either side of anyone ever having these autoimmune conditions." And I said to her, I said, "Mom, I know that you don't believe in these things, but there are some who think, and you know I've expressed to you that I've had this experience, that encounters with quote-unquote aliens or extraterrestrials sometimes result in families manifesting various illnesses." And she said, "Oh, you mean the orange light that came through the window when you were a baby?" I said, "What?" I said, wait a minute. I took out my iPhone, I started the recorder, and I said, "Tell me about this." And she started relaying a story, and she didn't say exactly how old I was at the time, but she said she was getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to prepare a bottle for me. So my assumption is I was somewhere around a year old. I was born in 1953, January, so I'm guessing December, January of 1953 or 1954. And she said when she went into the kitchen, this orange glow was coming through the window. Now, we lived in an apartment house in Brooklyn in a very urban neighborhood. And so for an orange glow to be coming through the window, it had to be something very unusual. And she said she was so tired, and these are her words, she was so tired, she really didn't pay any attention to it. But it lasted for a few minutes while she was preparing and giving me the bottle, and then it disappeared and she went back to sleep. And she has no other recollection connected to that. So here she's relaying this story to me that, you know, she had never discussed ever in all the time that we've talked about things in life. And then she went on to say that I said, "Did you ever have any other unusual experiences?" She said, "Well, when your father was having surgery and I was in the waiting room one time, I suddenly saw myself from the corner of the room from the ceiling." She said, "I was up in the ceiling looking down on myself and observing myself." She had an out-of-body experience while in a waiting room waiting for my father during surgery. And she had never shared any of this stuff with me before. So above and beyond the fact that she told me these wonderful pieces of information, which sort of affirm and confirm some of the experiences we've had in life, the takeaway I had from this was if you have an elderly parent, and you haven't really had a heart-to-heart with them in a long time, or there are things you want to ask them about that you've always wondered about, sit down with them, surreptitiously or with their permission, put a recorder out and start getting their stories, because once they're gone, so are the stories, unless you have them documented in some way. And I think this is for people. I'm 61 now, and I have a lot of friends who are in my age group who were born in the boomers, and it's really important while your parents are still alive to start getting some of that wisdom and knowledge and saving it somehow, either by recording it or writing it down. But have that conversation and do it sooner than later. It's really important, and that's my Church of Second Sight.
It's a great church, and thank you for sharing that story with us, Vic.
Thank
and
you.
I'd love to hear those that recording if one day.
We will, with her permission, we'll put it on the show one day. I'm going to ask her first, but I'm sure she'll be okay with it.
All right, fantastic. And before we get on with our interview, I just want to let people know, and I'm looking for input here. Victor and I are thinking about taking Second Sight and live streaming it. Just a thought, it's something that we've been thinking about, and if you guys would like to see us live stream this show, reach out. You can get us on Facebook, on our fan pages. My email is chrisgeorge10@AOL.com. My website is chrisgeorgesecondsight.com. Send us your thoughts on it. If you would like to see it, we're going to do our best to make that happen.
Now, Chris, I just want to clarify that you're talking about video streaming.
Yes, video streaming, and I will be doing the show naked, so...
So, folks, you will be seeing Chris George, and the voice. You will be seeing us in addition to us talking to you. So it'll be an interesting experience.
Oh, it'll be fun. Anyway, why don't we get on with this interview? And it's the start of the second hour. And Victor, please, why don't you start the second hour?
Chris, it will be my distinct privilege, honor, and pleasure to start the second hour with our wonderful guest, Simone Wright, author of First Intelligence, Using the Science and Spirit of Intuition. Simone, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Chris. The visual in my head of you naked, oh boy, gotta tell.
Simone, if you saw me naked, you'd be laughing just as hard as Victor. That's a whole other story, but I'm sorry. Go ahead, Victor.
My intuitive superpower is visual, so I'm...
There you go.
Right, now I'm blushing.
Simone, I will say one thing about Chris. Forgetting about the nakedness, if you use your intuitive visual power, he has the most amazing eyes of any guy that I know.
Stop.
And he really has the eyes of a psychic. If you look at his eyes,
those crazy long eyelashes, are those kind?
No, I'm talking about the color. Actually, the color.
Long eyelashes, though.
But the color of the eyes, of the eyes is really, really special.
Do you know? Wait, Simone. Do you know the famous psychic Joyce Keller?
I do not.
Okay, well, she's a world famous psychic. She's actually given all the psychics that are on television now their start on her show 20 years ago.
Okay.
20 some odd years ago. Anyway. She's one of my very close friends, and she's interviewed me like 10 times. And one time on her show, and believe me, to this day I have not lived this down. She said, no, actually it was her husband Jack who said, "Well, everyone, to give you a visual on Chris, his eyes are the color of the sky when it meets the ocean. That's the color of his eyes. He's like the Michelangelo of the psychic world." I was like, "What?" The next day. You have no idea the abuse I took for that. You have no idea. Anyway.
I won't abuse you, but eyes are a pretty powerful thing. That's the first place I look.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, okay.
So getting back to your work, Simone, you had mentioned earlier that your work with police helped you to shape your book's extremely practical approach to intuition. Let's talk a little bit more about that. How did that come to be?
Well, you can't go into a room full of 22 police detectives and, start talking about crystals and chanting and calling in spirit. You just can't. They won't hear you. So when I started designing the program for them, and I called it Integrated Intelligence, combining logic and intuition in the service of law enforcement. That was the name of the program. And being able to bring it down to earth, make it really grounded and practical, and bring it into everyday applications was what sort of gave me I was able to validate a lot of experiences that I had in the street, on the field, and that they had in the field, and was able to sort of say, okay, if you've experienced this in the field, then this is what's going on. This is what you're experiencing. This is how your biology is intuitively responding to what you're recognizing in the field, and being able to sort of communicate or speak that language so that they could translate and understand it in a practical way. And it speaks to what Chris was saying earlier when he was being disrespected by law enforcement, simply because they just didn't understand it. Mm-hmm. And I was so actually grateful. And again, when I offered to speak it, I know I wasn't speaking it because I would have talked myself out of it. But what it forced me to do was really get practical and simplify it and make it easy, so that it wasn't something that somebody had to go out and become a vegetarian about, or go to an ashram and study it. It was something that they could do. They could flip a switch and it would start to work for them right away.
Yeah.
All right. Well, how should our listeners expect intuition to show up for them? I mean, many think of this as an inner voice. Is that so?
Well, it'll show up for people in a variety of ways. It comes in, and I'll address this, it comes in 4 levels. Intuition speaks to us in 4 levels. And the first level is gut instinct. It's what, we've all heard of gut instinct. But instinct is a skill that every living organism on the planet possesses. And what instinct is it serves a living being's desire to survive. It keeps us, it addresses survival, safety, and security. It's that gut instinct that we all know that tells us not to go down a dark alley or not to negotiate a business deal with a certain person. It keeps our structure alive. The second level of intuition is our heart wisdom. It's our heart intelligence. And that level of intuition speaks to us through communication, our ability to compassionately connect with other people, with nature, with the furry critters in our lives, and to develop community. And that level of intuition is, and this is what we're having a heart-to-heart conversation, and that's why we're connecting so deeply and we're having so much fun together. We are speaking intuitively. None of us are coming from our head. We're all coming from our heart, and that's why this is such a powerful and fun conversation. And then the third level of intuition it comes from our brain. It's that part that's situated in our pineal gland, our pituitary, our hypothalamus, and various other structures of our brain. It's the part that a lot of people know as psychic ability. It's that ESP, it's that extrasensory perception, the ability to have precognitive information, to know what you know without knowing it. But the fun part of the third level of intuition that thrills me so deeply is the aspect of innovation, the aspect of being able to come up with ideas that are mind-blowing, earth-shattering, paradigm-moving, and that will change and alter your life in ways that you would have never considered before. It's the ability to come up with those inspiration, those impressions and impulses that guide you into new paradigms of life. And then the fourth level of intuition is the universal wisdom. It's that higher part of us. It's that timeless, ageless part that's never been born, will never die, that part of us that sees the bigger picture, that knows that everything is connected one way or another, and that to serve one is to serve them all, and that ultimately, if we follow our intuition, it's going to be a win-win for everybody. It's the part of us that knows that this little bitty skin suit that we're running around in isn't all we are. And so each of those levels will operate and will be active at different times. So it's important to be able to recognize them when they show up, because obviously your gut instinct is going to serve you and guide you to tell you not to go down a certain direction. And at that moment, your heart intuition, your ability to communicate, isn't going to say, well, let's have a heart-to-heart with this guy who's chasing us down the alley. In that moment, your gut's saying, get the heck out of the alley. So it's every level is operational at different times, and it serves us all when we need it.
One of my favorite aspects is tapping in to the universal mind or the Akashic records or whatever language we want to give to that source of information that's past, present, and future and timeless, basically. And to have what has been referred to as the flash of illumination or the aha moment, or the what's the word in Latin? The epiphany. That might be Greek. Epiphany. Talk a little bit about that. Where does that come from?
Well, that in my perception, it comes from that third level of that psychic ability, the ability to have those epiphanies. That is another level of consciousness. And what I also like to remind people of is that personality, the people who are having these conversations right now between the three of us, personality doesn't have the ability to create. Consciousness does. And that grander vision of us, that broader view of us that has that connection to those wider visions, we're always connected to it. It's not like we have to go and plug ourselves in. It's always there. It's just whether or not we are willing or able to access the information that's held in those epiphanies. And that's the brilliance, too, of our intuition as well. Our intuition is not going to give us the information held in those epiphanies until we're ready. It knows where we are at any given moment. It knows what we're prepared for. It knows what we're capable of. And it gives us just what we can handle at any given moment and sees the bigger picture of what we might not quite appreciate in ourselves and calls us to task. Calls us up. It calls us up.
Well, Simone, what's the difference between intuition and instinct? A lot of people think it's the same thing.
Yeah, and that's another one of those misconceptions that we talked about earlier. Instinct is that basic ability for every living organism on the planet to keep its bodily functions alive. So when we're getting gut instinct, that's our body's ability to gather information from the environment. And what it's doing then is it's saying instinct only operates on one of two platforms, growth or survival. And you are either in growth mode or you're in survival mode. And when your body is in an environment that might not be safe, your body is automatically going to shift into survival mode. That's when you get those gut instincts that say run, get out, move, hang up the phone, and your body will automatically do things so that the blood that's held in your belly is pushed out of your viscera and into your arms and legs so that you can run. And in those moments, your body cannot function at higher levels of intuitive wisdom. This is why we've got to start from a platform of peace, because all of the energy is forced out into your muscles so that you can take action. So if you're not in survival mode, the only other place you can be is in growth mode or evolution mode, when your body is balanced and it can start taking action intuitively based on the directions you want to go, as opposed to taking the actions only that will keep you alive. And intuition is a far broader, multidimensional, multifaceted wisdom that doesn't operate automatically, but can be guided and steered based on our desire, based on our will, based on our dreams, and can serve us as we want it to, when we want it to, how we want it to, unlike instinct, which is automatic.
Let me ask you a follow-up to that question with reference to the difference between instinct and intuition. The chemical response, you mentioned the visceral response in fight or flight mode, in survival, in things that are necessary on the baser animal level to keep us alive and keep us growing and provide life for us. Is there a different chemical response in your studies and work?
Well, what was interesting was as I was developing or understanding the trilateral intelligence system, the gut, the heart, and the brain, was that what I learned about what was held in the gut that served us as instinct is that in the belly, in the gut itself, it is a brain, it is an intelligence of itself, and over 80% of the neurochemicals that we produce in our body are produced in our gut. They're not produced in our brain. So there's a whole lot of chemical stuff happening in that instinctual process that we think is always limited to our brain, but that is guiding us through our belly itself, and that the gut instinct can operate completely separate from the brain. If you ask anybody who has had a major spinal cord injury where their spinal cord has been severed, their gut still works, even though the rest of the nervous system may not. So it's a completely separate intelligence, and that's part of the superpower of bringing this peace platform in, because it brings the gut online with the heart and the brain. So all of the neurotransmitters in the entire body are working in the same direction. But yeah, the gut, the belly is a very powerful intelligence and can serve us in really powerful ways beyond survival.
That must mean that Chris has an incredible IQ. And I do too. We both are belly men. Let's put it that way. So yeah.
Well, Victor, you do realize that my belly is going down.
Absolutely. Mine too.
Well, you lost the whole person. I mean, I'm just
That's
starting.
true.
I'm only 23 pounds down, 27 to go, but I'm getting there. Anyway, as Simone, in your book, First Intelligence, you write about our ability to receive being a crucial part of using intuition. Can you please explain that?
Sure. The intuitive conversation is a back and forth. You've got to be able to give information in order to receive information. You've got to give energy in order to receive energy. And a lot of folks nowadays, I notice in my own training and in people that I talk to, have a hard time receiving. Even if it's something as simple as a compliment. A lot of folks, you'll say, oh, wow, congratulations, Chris, you lost 26 pounds. That's awesome. And you'll say, yeah, but I got 28 more to lose. As opposed to saying, wow, thanks. Yeah, I'm really proud of what I've done. And allowing the energy of that graciousness to be planted in you. And women are notorious. Oh, sweetheart, you look really great. Yeah, but my butt looks really big. I mean, we have a really hard time accepting things.
Right.
And so I encourage people to start just saying thank you. Even if the light turns green and you get to work on time, thanks. If somebody passes you a compliment, thank you. If somebody wants to buy you lunch, let them buy you lunch. Don't offer to buy them dessert. Don't offer to leave the tip. Just say thank you. And as you start to allow things to be given to you for free, for nothing, without having to earn them, you'll notice that your intuition starts to respond to that. And as you start to allow this vibration, this energy to start flowing to you, you'll notice that you'll start recognizing your intuitive hits more regularly. And when you do start to notice them, even if you can't take action on them quite yet at that precise moment, just say thanks. Say, wow, all right, I noticed something there. I felt a hit there. Thanks. I heard you. Maybe go write it down. Maybe start a journal for all these little hits. And what starts to happen as you start to allow this reception, as you start to say thank you and start to receive this, it starts to operate, your intuition starts to operate like a puppy who's being rewarded for a cookie. Every time you say thank you to your intuition, it's like rewarding your subconscious mind, and it'll start responding to the good feelings that you get when you start to acknowledge and receive, and it'll start to happen more and more quickly and with more and more result.
So this whole concept of gratitude for the information received and being amenable and open to receiving is critical to your process.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and there's something that you guys and I were talking about at the beginning. Is like, we'll hear the intuitive hit and we'll be like, nah, that can't be right. Or no, that's not right. Or nah, I'm going to be late. Or that doesn't make any sense. And so we start to dismiss and diminish what our intuition is telling us. And that's part of the reason too that we as children it's trained out of us so easily. And so being able to start to respond and with appreciation and even it doesn't even need to be gratitude. It can just be, I hear ya, I gotcha, I hear ya. Starting there, and you start to develop, you start to increase the connections in the brain function that allow that intuitive communication to accelerate.
So with this acknowledgement, when you do your acknowledgement, your gratitude or your acknowledgement, I hear you, I got it. In your personal way, who are you thanking or who are you acknowledging?
I'm acknowledging my higher aspect. I'm acknowledging my soul. I'm acknowledging that grander part of me that's speaking through my higher mind.
Okay.
And for some people, I train a lot of people who are very strongly faith-based. For them, that might be their angels, that might be their saints, that might be their communication with God or Buddha or Jesus or whomever that higher power is that has great meaning to them. Whatever serves you that you can connect to and you have a level of intimacy and connection with, then that's what's speaking with you.
Do you find it important for people to have some type of a focal point for this? And in other words, whether they have a faith-based focal point or a universal focal point, is it important to have a focal point?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. No. Other than the understanding that there is an intelligence within you, and it doesn't really matter what you might want to call it, but as long as you acknowledge that it is there, then it will start to serve you. But it doesn't need to be a specific focal point. I mean, obviously, being raised in Catholic school, there were all sorts of focal points that we were encouraged to talk to, and saints to talk to, and Jesus to talk to, and all sorts of things to talk to. And I always kind of knew that, well, if I just got quiet, I could have direct access, and I didn't have to go to the priest. And boy,
right.
that got me in trouble.
But it was also, I bet you that was also very empowering.
It was when I got older.
Yeah.
It was when I got older, for sure. But understanding that and that's really one of the most simple first steps to starting to access this intuition is just acknowledging and saying, look, I know within myself I have this higher wisdom. I know I've got this inner guidance. I'm just going to start listening and see what shows up. And that's, a very simple first step.
Sounds good to me. I want to know, is there a specific protocol to activating and using our intuitive intelligence?
Yeah, there is. And, it starts on that platform of peace, precision, and perception. And there are sort of 7 steps to it. The first is to generate coherence, and that's, what we talked about in being able to cultivate a platform of peace. And that's being able to go to the heart, and the heart sends out an electromagnetic signal that's, 60 times stronger than the brain, and that coordinates all of the intelligence in the body and brings it onto one sort of path, one sort of channel. And then you need to engage with the field as step 2. And this is the Akashic field or the universal mind, or some people call it the matrix, or some people call it the source. It's got all sorts of names, but it's the foundation of the universal intelligence. It's the power and the consciousness that drives everything in the universe. And we got to link to that. And we are already linked to it, but we have to, in order to gather information that we want to use specifically, we have to link to it in a specific way. And that means we have to access it in such a way that will get us the information that we want to use our intuition. So if I'm looking for a missing kid, by setting an intention for finding that child, I'm linking to the field in a specific way to find that kid. And in the field, nothing is ever lost. There's nothing missing in the field. It's always available. You just need to be able to link in order to find it. And then the third step is to ask the appropriate questions. It's called the power of the ask. If you engage from a place of coherence, if you know the frequency with which you want to engage, then you need to start asking for direction. And it's important to ask from a place of empowerment. This is a part of that precision that we talked about earlier. If you ask with an empowered question, what is the best choice for me to make at this moment? What is the wisest choice for me to make at this moment? How can I best serve my boss at work? Asking questions of what or how will empower your intuition to guide you with directions that give you information based on what or how. It'll tell you where to go. If you're asking questions that say, oh, should I make this choice? Or will I succeed? Or is this the guy I should marry? That's not going to help you. Those aren't empowered questions. You have to structure empowered questions in order to get empowered answers. Then you got to let go of it. Then go about your day. Go walk your cat. Walk your dog, pet your cat, go garden, go drive, let it go, release it to that universal mind, and then start to notice what you notice. this is part of that perception aspect. Your intuition is going to start communicating with you using your entire nervous system, all 6 senses, and there are 6: sight, smell, sound, taste, touch, and knowing. There's that broader sense where you just know what you know without knowing how you know it, but you know it. And start noticing what you notice. You might hear a conversation between complete strangers in a bar that are completely across the room. They're 20 feet away, yet you hear 2 words that are meant for you. Or you'll wake up with a song in your mind. My intuition loves to sing to me. I wake up in the morning with these songs that I haven't heard since I was 12, and I'm like, what? What's that? Or cravings that you suddenly notice, or impressions that you feel, or tastes or smells in your mouth. Things that your senses are going to start getting your attention. Pay attention to those things. And then you have to do a certain degree of interpretation, because intuition sometimes will speak to you directly. It'll be turn left. It will be call Bob. It will be let's go visit New York. It will be very direct, and it's easy to understand. And other times it will be more symbolic. You'll be seeing grasshoppers all over the place, and you're like, what the heck does a grasshopper mean? Or you'll see Indian symbols or something. In those moments, you have to do some interpretation, and you need to ask, well, what does that mean to me? What if it's not direct? Because sometimes it is direct and sometimes it's indirect. So you need to do a little bit of homework there. And then the next step is to take action. And I encourage people to take inspired action, not to take action from a place of feeling like you gotta do it. You're motivated, you're feeling pushed, you're feeling forced. No. If you're coming at it from that aspect, you're not going to be still maintaining that platform of peace. Take action that inspires you. Take action that you think, oh, well, that might be a little challenging, but oh gosh, I know I've never done it before, but I could give that a try. I could try it so that your energy is all aligned when you are taking the action. And then the last step is allowing it to come to fruition, is allowing it to start to bloom and taking your hands off how you expect all of the solutions to show up, because our little limited mind doesn't have the higher perspective that our intuition does. And so our intuition is going to show up with those epiphanies and those higher inspirations that we would have never considered in a million years. And when you start getting ideas that are showing up in that way, that's when you know your intuition is spot on. And what was so cool about this fruition part, as I was writing this last chapter, knowing that fruition was the last step, and I was doing the research on fruition, I thought, well, an intuition spoke to me, and it's like, well, we want you to find out what the meaning of fruition is. And so I went and I looked it up. And fruition means, to bear fruit, to come to being. And as we're building success, we want things to come to fruition. But what was so thrilling for me was when I discovered the origins of the word fruition was in the Latin meaning to enjoy. The root of the word fruition means to enjoy. And I thought, holy crap, of course that's what it means. So in order for us to allow our intuition to start speaking to us so that our goals and our desires start coming to fruition, is we have to be in a place of happiness and joy and allowing and childlike wonder. Fruition equals enjoyment. Enjoyment equals fruition. You want the goal to happen, approach it from a sense of play and joy, and it will come.
And listeners, you just got a 5-minute class in the art of true manifestation from our wonderful guest, Simone Wright, author of the book, First Intelligence, Using the Science and Spirit of Intuition. And Simone, please tell our listeners how they can learn more about your work and get a copy of your book.
Well, I'm going to see if I can get all of the little goose pimples on my arms to go down first. Because that is a sign that good stuff is happening.
Absolutely.
What am I talking about? Oh, yes. How to reach.
You were in one of those wonderful moments, the aha moment, the discovery, the ultimate connection to the universe moment. It's beautiful.
You gotta love those moments.
That's it.
Like la la la. What was I talking about? How to reach me? My website, www.simonewright.com. SIMONEWRIGHT.com. I've got a blog on there, lots of videos on YouTube. I approach it from a very cheeky way. There's a really fun new video on there on how to use wine tasting in order to expand your intuitive intelligence. So, Chris, you might like that. You might be able to use your Tennessee Jack Daniels stuff in order to, get even more powerful.
I can definitely try it.
You can join my email list. There's a great way to connect with me there, and I do personal coaching, one-on-one single sessions, and ongoing things. And again, I've got an online workshop coming up in September that people can check out too.
And her book is available online at Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. And again, we encourage all of our listeners to use your local bookstores. Those are the foundation of everything in publishing, and they're a breed that's sadly and unfortunately disappearing. But go out to your neighborhood bookstore and say, I want Simone Wright's book, First Intelligence, Using the Science and Spirit of Intuition. If they don't have it on the shelf, say, I will wait for you to get it from me because I want to buy it from you, my local book supplier, because we love local book suppliers. And for our listeners who are listening tonight, you have the opportunity to win a free copy of Simone's book, and it's real easy. You send an email to contest@secondsightradio.com, contest@secondsightradio.com, and in the subject line, just put in the word intelligence, and we will select from all of the entries one winner, and we'll announce that winner on a future show.
Can I send an email?
No. Here, I have to give the disclaimer now. Here's the official disclaimer. Employees of the station, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, or Simone's family are not eligible to win this contest. So there we go. We did our little thing. So, Simone, we briefly touched upon this before, and we talked about cellular. Where is intuition really housed in our bodies?
Well, it's housed in every cell. Again, every cell has the ability to gather and process information from the field and feed it back to our nervous system. But the mind itself, consciousness, it's held really as an aspect of consciousness. It's, if we break down our physical body, if you go small enough, you guys know this, if you go small enough, there's nothing left but energy. And
right.
Even below energy is consciousness.
Right.
So there is no, and people say, well, you're using your brain when you're using your intuition. And like, well, you are, but you're not, because if you go deep enough, we don't exist. We're just fields of energy and consciousness. So it's held everywhere in the body, and this is, an existential thing, and nowhere in the body, because the body itself doesn't exist. You know?
Absolutely.
So it's a tricky question, and so when you're addressing the physicality of it, which is what you need to do in order to train people out of the voodoo of it, you've got to go, okay, it's held in the brain, and it's held in the heart, and it's held in the gut, and then smaller it's held in the cells, and then smaller it's held in the DNA, and then smaller it's held in the mitochondria, and then smaller it's held in this, in the atoms, and then smaller it's held in the consciousness. So if you break it down smaller and smaller, it's just held in our energetic field.
Absolutely. And just touching upon this one more time, you had mentioned that we actually have 6 senses. How many people do you find use, we talk about clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, etc. How many people use the visual field, the auditory field, the sensual field in your experience in teaching?
It just depends on the people. I'm a trained artist, so things are very visual for me. When I see something, when I'm using my intuition, I see it. It plays like a movie in my head. I see everything very clearly.
Right. But
you talk to a chef or a wine sommelier, and his intuition is going to speak to him through his sense of taste and smell. If you talk to somebody who maybe perhaps learns kinesthetically by doing stuff, they've got to build something in order to understand how it works, then those people will tend to feel things more kinesthetically. They'll feel stuff in their body. Musicians tend to hear things. They get information through song. They get information through sound or frequency or vibration. So it really depends on the individual. But I tend to notice that if you have a learning power physically, that tends to be, at least at the beginning, where your intuitive superpower is based at first. And then as you get better and better at developing this conversation, all the others start to come on board eventually, so that all of them are working.
I refer to people who use all of them as éclairs.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. A chocolate-filled éclair, for sure.
That's right, and very tasty.
Yes.
Victor, I really, I just don't know what I'm going to do with you. But
Thank you.
Simone, I go through this every week with him. He comes up with something every single week that just makes me just shake my head.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's very good. Sometimes it's corny. Sometimes I don't even know what the hell it is, but I wait for it every week.
And it works for him. It comes from his wisdom somewhere. So,
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Victor, I say this all the time. I give him so much credit for this show. Since he's been my co-host for the last year and a half, we've gained 300,000 listeners. Which is tremendous, and I attribute that to his professionalism and his wit and his knowledge and and the way the two of us work together. So, I mess with him a bit, but what you don't know, Simone, is that every week we do a commercial for our guests, and he makes me the brunt of the joke every single week in the commercial. Every week. So,
be kind, Victor. Be kind.
You know what? It's always done in kindness. It's always done in good spirit, not mean spirit.
Yes.
And Chris is just being funny about it. But Chris, what we've learned, and the reason I do the corny joke or throw in the line once in a while, is that sometimes we talk about very heavy topics, and giving a little humor helps the mind, body, and spirit digest the heavy topics. So that's the reason why I do it.
I like that.
Thank you.
So, Simone, I want to know, how can one tell if the information being sent is in fact intuition rather than fear, ego, influences, past conditioning?
Well, you'll know by how it feels. An intuitive hit, and this is what we sort of spoke about at the very beginning, it comes in a very powerful yet neutral way. It is clear. It is open, it is grounded, it is powerful, it is centered, it is, there are all sorts of words you could use to explain it. And it feels a certain way to each individual, but it feels such a way that allows you to step into that feeling of growth versus stepping into a feeling of fear or paranoia or worry or anxiety or all of those other sensations, and they're all very specific. Paranoia has its own energetic feeling, its own code. Worry, past conditioning, belief systems, they all feel a certain way. So that's part of the precision that we talked about earlier, is learning how to identify. Before you dive into the world intuitively, I encourage people to start to recognize, okay, how does fear feel to me? How does paranoia feel in my body? What and can you, Victor, can you explain in the past when you felt paranoia how it might feel in your body?
Right. Oh, do you want me to actually explain it?
Yeah.
Well, it happened one night after a Crosby, Stills and Nash concert in the Village, and a friend of mine and I, a couple of friends, we had been smoking some very aromatic cigarettes.
Yes.
And that's, by the way, this is the only time I've ever felt paranoid in my entire life. And we were walking toward the subway station, and I had a sense that we were being followed by the police. Mm-hmm. And that was the only time I ever actually felt paranoid in my life. But it was a sense of, oh my, what's going to happen? Are they going to arrest us? This whole construct that you make in your mind of consequences for an action that you've taken.
Yeah. And did it feel good to you?
Oh no, absolutely not. It was very, very disturbing.
Yeah. And so that's how you start to identify. And again, you do it before you're really sort of forced to require your intuition to serve you. And you write down a list, and I call it's getting to know your intuition taste test. And you get really good at recognizing, okay, I know when I'm being afraid. I know what fear feels like in me. And I know when wishful thinking, I know what that feels like to me. It feels different too. So as you start to develop and recognize how these things feel to you, and then when you start using your intuition in a regular way, you'll start to recognize it, because your intuition is going to feel very different. And there's not going to be any emotional charge to it at all. It's just going to be boom, go, action. And you'll feel empowered to do that. But you have to start to recognize that about yourself now before you start really engaging in the intuitive work.
Mm.
Simone, I want to know, what would you like your readers to take, our listeners to take away from your book?
that this magic is in you. It's your birthright. You're born with it. It's waiting to serve you. You don't have to be anything other than who you are. You don't have to become a vegetarian or stop drinking bourbon or eating steak or move to an ashram. It's ready and waiting to serve you right now based on who you are. And you can, once you get a grip on it, you can use it to guide you to anything you want it to guide you towards.
Absolutely. Just wonderful. Our wonderful guest, Simone Wright. One more time, Simone, please tell our listeners how they can find out more about you and your work and get in touch with you.
By visiting my website at www.simonewright.com, SIMONEWRIGHT.com. I am based in Los Angeles, and you can connect with me any way you want on my website, and my book is available there on the site. And that's how you do it.
And are you teaching any classes around the country right now?
I do have the online one coming in September, third week of September. It runs 6 consecutive Tuesdays for 90 minutes each day, but I don't have anything lined up. I am speaking at the Intuition 2.0 conference here in Los Angeles, second weekend of September. But what I also do with people, if you want me to come to your town and teach a class, you can definitely reach out to me and we can work together to make that a possibility. And if you help me put a class together, I will give you your weekend workshop for free.
Wow, we got to think about that.
That's always
for sure.
good.
Simone Wright, author of First Intelligence, Using the Science and Spirit of Intuition. Simone, we would love to have you back again in the near future. Would that be possible?
Oh, golly gee, yeah. I've had such a great time.
And do you have a new book in the works by any chance?
Oh, jeepers, Victor.
The magic question.
I'm a creative person. I have paintings and different paintings in various stages of completion, and 3 or 4 book ideas, novels, and all sorts of things floating around in my head.
Oh yeah.
And as a creative with the intuition turned on, it's like, okay, one thing at a time.
I know.
So right now, my passion really, and I'm sure you can tell in my voice how much I love talking about this and how much I love teaching people about it. This is going to be my focus for the next little while for sure, but I'd love to come back and talk to you guys more.
Wonderful. And that voice is a lovely voice. You have a great voice. In fact, this is the kind of voice that if I were attending a seminar or a class, I love listening to your voice because it's so clear and succinct, and it's not an intrusive voice. It's a voice of friendship, and it's wonderful. So thank you so much for being our guest.
Oh, my great pleasure.
Simone. Victor, you see, she doesn't know this. I mean, she's not using her intuition right now, which she really should be. But he's flirting with you, Simone.
No, I'm not. I'm just. You know what, Chris? Chris. Why don't you get it that when I connect with someone energetically, that we're working on the same level, that it's nice to acknowledge them. That's all this is about. It's
nice to acknowledge them, but I know you pretty well now, and I know when you're flirting, and I'm telling you, you're flirting.
My wife is standing right next to me with a baseball bat, so I'm not flirting right now.
Well, she's gonna bat your ass out.
Simone, thank you so much.
Oh, my great pleasure. My great pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for being our guest tonight. I really enjoyed the show, and I thought you were fantastic. And I would love to absolutely have you back on the show again.
You know how to reach me.
We certainly do.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Chris, I actually have a gemstone this week which corresponds to what we've been talking about. The gemstone is amethyst, and amethyst is a meditative and calming stone which works in the emotional, spiritual, and physical planes to provide calm, balance, patience, and peace. And there's your Peace Foundation. In the psychic and spiritual realms, amethyst is an excellent all-purpose stone that can increase spirituality and enhance intuition and psychic powers of all kinds. It does this by making a clear connection between the earth plane and other planes and worlds. Amethyst is also excellent for meditation and lucid dreaming. It is used to open one's channels to telepathy, past life regression, clairaudience, clairvoyance, and communication with angels. Amethyst also protects against psychic attacks, especially during spiritual work. Our gemstone of the week is amethyst, and that's about the end of our show, Chris.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that really tied in well with our guests, and amethyst is definitely one of my favorite gemstones. And thank you for using Amethyst tonight. It fit in perfectly. So, Victor, who do we have as a guest next week?
Chris, our guest next week is Joanne Brokus, and she's the author of the book, The Power of Angels.
That sounds good, Victor. You know what? We all could use some angels in our lives, especially lately with the way things have been going with people dying young and whatnot, a lot of evil in the world. Let's talk about angels. I think I'm going to really enjoy this subject. So remember, people, join us every week because we're here making the unbelievable believable. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Have a good night, everyone, and thanks.